Welcome to paradise. I'm Dave Huddleston. SuChin Pak and I are here in Tahiti to answer your questions about science and nature. It's the perfect setting for adventure and discovery.
Coming up next on Newton's Apple, we come face to face with the sharks of Tahiti.
Here he goes. Yes, he's sneaking in behind us.
We're searching for pearls and going a little nuts.
Follow those coconuts.
Teaming up for adventures in science next on Newton's Apple.
Newton's Apple is made possible by a grant from 3M, the company where creative people find ways to make our world even better. 3M, innovation.
Tahiti is just one of the many islands of French Polynesia located in the South Pacific Ocean. Along these shores, early Polynesian explorers found coral reefs teeming with life and lurking danger.
You know, we get a lot of questions about sharks, and here's just a few. Mason Hubbard of Mesa, Arizona asks, do sharks have to keep swimming in order to breathe? Interesting. Danielle Lang of Springwater, New York asks, why are sharks attracted to red blood? Oh, and Ellen Rootseller of Seattle, Washington asks, are sharks capable of eating a man? You know, I don't like the direction these questions are going.
Hi, Dave. Scare ya?
SuChin! Are you crazy?
Okay, so call us irresponsible, feeding on people's fears like that. But humans have always demonized the shark. Just look at sharks in the movies or the media. They play upon our most primal fears. And as a diver, sharks are absolutely one of mine. To face this fear, I've come to the island atoll of Rangiroa, famous for one of the world's truly great shark dives. The atoll is shaped in a ring, once the mouth of an active volcano. And the Taputa Pass, where the sea connects with the island lagoon, is home to hundreds of sharks. My shark expert is Dick Johnson, marine biologist and author of Sharks of Polynesia. And no, that is not a ninja, it's our dive master, Yves Lefebvre. I am in good hands. As we dive, we'll talk underwater using an ultrasonic communication system, which operates on the same wavelengths as the sonar of a dolphin.
Where's the little shark?
These fish aren't really that attracted to me, but to the baitfish Dick is waving into the current of the pass. As sharks can smell blood over a half-mile away, it's not long before we get an interested party. A 4-foot reef white-tip shark.
Right behind you, right behind you.
The reef white-tip is one of many sharks that doesn't need to keep swimming in order to breathe, and its teeth are designed for holding more than cutting, so it thrashes around to tear off a bite.
Here he goes. Yes, he's sneaking in behind us.
Did that pump some adrenaline? Oh my God. Incredible. Absolutely incredible.
But the reef white-tip was just a warm-up. Next, we would swim with the big boys, the gray reef sharks. Of over 350 species of sharks, only a handful are known to be man-eaters. But the gray reef is not among them. They've attacked humans in rare cases, but there's only been one report of an unprovoked attack in Rangiroa. Dick is very familiar with these waters. In 1971, a younger Dick Johnson witnessed and documented the strange body language of the gray reef shark. When he cornered and threatened one, it would break out of its normal swimming motion and gyrate its body in a rolling, weaving dance just before an attack.
They drop their pectoral fins, they swim in a very exaggerated motion. The head is bent upward, the jaw is slightly exposed, somewhat akin to a cat cornered by a dog. This is an indication that don't do what you're doing, back off.
No problem here. We have no plans of threatening any gray reef sharks.
We go now to the choke point. We're down to 80 feet. average. Okay. We have a larger school of grey shark at this point. It's the entrance of the Tiputa Pass. We stay very close together, and after we drift in the pass, and we follow the current to the small islet in the lagoon. Okay?
Maybe just a little bit about the sharks. When we go down there, they'll be just swimming normally around. You'll see the gray reef, which is all gray with a black margin on the caudal fin. We could see black tip reef sharks with black tips or reef white tips. Eve will be teasing them a little bit here as we get along in the game. Basically, sort of watch what we're doing. They're not going to be a problem. We'll be moving at them, aggressing more on them than they will be on us. But on occasion, they'll pass close. So be calm, not a problem, have fun.
Okay.
You'll enjoy it.
And I'll stick close to you.
Okay.
Mask on, regulator in, at 3 we go. 1, 2, 3.
Here comes another one right in over here. There's shark calling us.
Outside the pass, we see beautiful silver-tip sharks and the larger silky sharks, about 8 feet long. Nervous? Me? The heightened senses of a shark make it an amazing hunter. Their eyes are 10 times more sensitive than ours, and they can hear a struggling fish almost a mile away. But most surprising are the ampullae of Lorenzini, jelly-filled pores on a shark's head, which allow him to detect at close range the electrical fields given off by the bodies of animals, even mine.
My guess is we're getting closer to the reef because we're getting more and more gray reef sharks.
Soon, we drifted into the mouth of the pass to a coral formation called the Shark Cave. Here, I had a protective wall at my back as waves of curious gray reef sharks swam past.
But you're doing a good job. You've calmed down a bit. I think you have to.
The sharks are getting closer now as Eve takes the lid off his bucket of bait fish. What follows seems like madness. This is the famous feeding frenzy, and when sharks bump the camera, you know you're in the thick of it. But according to Dick, frenzy is a poor choice of words. These sharks are not losing their senses, they know exactly what they're doing.
They're still, even in this highly excited state, under considerable control. And they don't just race off and bite anything, although that can happen. But basically speaking, they know where the prey is, and they go after that.
Then, as quickly as it started, everything returned to normal. Eve sent up the signal for the dive boat, and we headed for the surface. To the ancient Polynesians, the shark was not seen as a demon, but as the final resting place of their souls. In the shark's domain, I found a similar respect for one of the sea's most efficient predators. As scientists continue to study shark behavior, perhaps others will come to a more complete understanding of this beautiful and ancient animal.
There is a Polynesian story of a woman who was bitten on the ankle by a shark. She called out his name and said, "You are my protector. You can't bite me." And the shark said, "I'm sorry. Here, I will leave my tooth marks to remind me so that I will never forget." And so began a tradition of tattooing the pattern of the shark's teeth around the ankle to protect from shark bite.
How's that for a segue? Because Jessica and Jeremy Smith of Sparks, Nevada want to know, why don't tattoos go away over time? Well, the Polynesian Islands are the perfect place to answer this question and many others, because it's here that tattoos were rediscovered by the Western world.
In the late 1700s, when European sailors returned from their voyages wearing tattoos, they came to be looked on as low-class and different. The tattoo's bad reputation has continued to this day. But the social status of tattooed people in Polynesian society was completely different. Dave went to Moorea, an open-air temple, to meet with former Tahitian Minister of Culture, Mako Tavane, who says that even the word tattoo comes from the Polynesian tatau.
Tatau means first, to mark something. And Tau means a period of your life, of our life. It's to mark something, to memorize something very important, socially important. It's my body.
The Polynesian tattoo was a cultural identity card, works of art displayed on a living canvas. Some islanders used figures from nature. Others used geometric patterns. Tattoos recorded tribal and family history or marked a coming of age, and all were highly respected until European missionaries banned the practice in the 1800s, and much of the knowledge was lost. But today, the art form is making a comeback, using traditional tools and materials drawn from nature.
This is the candle nut. In Tahitian, it's called te a'iri. The meat from the nut is placed over an open fire, and the soot is collected, mixed with water, and it becomes the dye for the tattoo. The next step is to get the dye into the skin, a process that SuChin is about to witness.
Haramai, haramai. Haramai, haramai. Yorana.
I'm greeted by Tavana Salmon, a man who has worked for many years to bring back the tradition behind the Polynesian tattoos. Today he will continue his work on Teheura, a man who has spent 2 years getting tattooed and still has a few years to go before he considers himself finished. Tavana will use the same methods and tools used by his Tahitian ancestors. Needless to say, we do not recommend that anyone try this at home. The first step is to draw the design on Teheura. He will use this design as a guide while performing the tattooing ritual. Next, he grinds and mixes the ink made from the candle nut. The tattooing comb, which Tavana has hand-constructed, contains needle-like blades, which are traditionally made from bone, shark's teeth, or the shell of a tortoise. This method of tattooing is quite painful. Most Tahitians choose modern tattooing machines instead. Tattoos are created by injecting pigments into the dermis, the permanent base layer of the skin. The pigment molecules are much too large for the body's immune system to break down and remain visible through the translucent outer layer of the skin. Applying a tattoo properly takes technical as well as aesthetic skill. If the ink is placed too deeply, body fluids will cause it to spread and lose definition. If it's not in the skin deeply enough, the colors will fade or actually disappear in just a few months.
So, Teheura, what does it mean to you to get these tattoos as a Tahitian?
No Tahiti neo, tau whenua tupuna te amone tau monan no Tahiti.
As you can see, Teheura is a living reminder of Tahiti's past. Like most Polynesians, he considers his tattoos a symbol of cultural pride. So we say,
Hey Tahiti, show us your tattoos!
Beneath the waters of this blue lagoon, an amazing process is going on. Simple animals are creating precious gems. We're here to answer a question from Emilio Herta from Edinburgh, Texas, who wants to know, how does an oyster make a pearl? Well, Emilio, here is where it all begins.
Here being the islands of the Tuamotu archipelago north of Tahiti. From the air, their blue lagoons shine like jewels against the dark ocean waters. this protected environment, the black pearl oysters, or Pinctada margaritifera, produce the famous Tahitian black pearl. I've come to the island of Manihi to get a first-hand look at a cultured pearl operation.
And they have a marina just...
My guide is Joel Hart, who helped start this pearl farm with his friend John Vahine Maire in 1985. Since that time, the black pearl has become the leading export of French Polynesia, thanks in part to Polynesian-run farms like this one. Finding a natural pearl is extremely rare, about a 1 in 15,000 chance. So it's easy to understand why black pearl oysters were almost wiped out by diving operations. But in the early 1960s, the Japanese discovered a technique that dramatically increased pearl production. They surgically implanted a piece of oyster tissue and a small bead into the oysters. And voila, strings and strings of cultured pearls.
SuChin.
We had barely arrived and already were pulling up strings of oysters from the lagoon.
Oh, this is really heavy. How many oysters are on each string?
I would say about 50 on each of these packages, so maybe 500 on the string that we're holding.
So how did these oysters get on the strings?
Well, we put in the ocean collectors at the surface of the lagoon on a rope. Then millions of eggs are just floating across the lagoon, and then they catch on to this collector made of plastic, and they start growing very tiny until this size, which takes about a year.
So that's why there's no oyster nursery on the farm. The nursery is the lagoon itself. The oysters release their sperm and eggs into the lagoon, and the baby oysters are conceived directly in the seawater. In a mere 20 hours, the embryos develop their distinctive shapes, and in 20 days, they can attach themselves to rocks, coral, or collectors.
So how big do they have to get before the seeding process starts?
Usually 10 centimeters, so some of these are about 6 or 7 now, so they're almost there, another few weeks and they'll be okay. But some are smaller, as you can see, so they will maybe be ready in about 4 to 6 months.
I was about to receive a crash course in pearl farming techniques.
Oh, voila. Okay.
First, Banis showed me how to pierce the shell, the oyster's first operation. Using a delicate bit, I drill a hole into the heel of the shell near the hinge. There's no danger to the oyster because the hole is placed outside the hinge itself.
Where's the hole?
Next comes the threading. A nylon thread is strung through the shell and tied in a loop. I said tied in a loop.
This is harder than it looks, believe me. Okay, here we go. Watch this. Magnificent knot. Aha. Voila! Look at that, huh?
The chains of oysters are then suspended in the lagoon, low enough in the water to shelter them from turbulence and high enough to protect them from sand. The secret to how a pearl is made is found just inside the shell, where an organ called the mantle secretes the protective mother-of-pearl coating. When an irritant like a parasite gets between the mantle and the shell, the oyster reacts. The parasite is trapped, and a sac-like pouch of cells forms around it. The sac then separates and drifts inside the oyster's body. The cells lining the sac continue to secrete the pearl coating over the intruder, building a spherical mass of calcium carbonate crystals that we call a pearl. Grafting technicians like Patero use this knowledge to make a cultured pearl. First, he cuts a piece of mantle from a donor oyster. The oyster's shells cannot be opened more than an inch, making this a difficult surgery. He makes an incision in the gonad or sex gland and creates a small cavity to place the bead. He then inserts a piece of mantle tissue with the secreting cells facing up. The nucleus, a bead from a freshwater mussel, is then placed on top of the graft. The whole operation takes 1 to 2 minutes.
How is it that so many different colors come from the same oyster?
Well, what determines the coloring is the piece of flesh that is taken from one shell that is sacrificed to be inserted into the others before putting the nucleus against it, and that will determine the coloring of the pearl itself.
As the oyster recovers, the piece of mantle tissue begins to undergo cell division until a pearl sac surrounds the nucleus. The cells secrete layer upon layer of pearl coating, somewhat similar to the rings on a tree. After 2 years in the lagoon, the nucleus will be coated to a thickness of 2 millimeters, to the human eye, completely identical to a natural pearl. Now I would witness the moment of truth, the birth of a pearl. Out of 100 oysters, about 50 have rejected the nucleus by now, and only 1 or 2 pearls will be perfect.
Vous voyez la paire?
Oui, oui. Wow, that's so cool. Oui. And that, Emilio Herta from Edinburgh, Texas, is how an oyster makes a pearl. Ces couleurs, très belles, n'est-ce pas?
Oui.
C'est presque parfait, n'est-ce pas?
C'est presque parfait.
Oui.
Do you have a question that you would like answered? Write us at Newton's Apple, P.O. Box 1400, 172 East 4th Street, St. Paul, Minnesota 55101. Or check out our webpage. Remember, our show depends on your questions.
This is a coconut palm, and up there are, you guessed it, coconuts. And if I can just get up there, I can answer this next question.
Hey, throw it down. Any minute now you pomo. I show you how to climb. Huh? Up. Hello.
Thanks. The question being, fascinating question. Let's investigate the coconut.
The coconut is the most widely used nut in the world. And inside the outer husk is the coconut we all know from the grocery store. But in Tahitian society, every part of the plant was used. Food from the coconut, milk and meat, as well as soap and lamp oil. Even the roof over their heads was provided by woven palm leaves.
And check this out. A blackened coconut shell filled with water becomes a mirror. But you know, coconuts weren't always so common. It took amazing engineering on the part of Mother Nature to spread them throughout these tropical islands.
When the ancient Polynesians discovered these islands, you can be sure they planted coconut palms. But coconuts have the proven ability to head out on their own.
Like most fruit-bearing plants, the fruit, or the coconut in this case, is a seed. And its sole purpose is to reproduce more coconut palms.
The coconut itself grows up to 15 inches long and 12 inches wide. And inside the husk and shell is a thin, white, fleshy layer called the meat, and it's filled with a watery liquid called the milk. Ah, very nutritious.
And what's really cool is that it's perfectly designed to be a seafaring vessel.
As the nut ripens, the liquid is gradually absorbed into the meat, leaving a semi-hollow escape pod. It's positively buoyant. The coconut matures in about 12 months and falls from the palm. Lots of them grow right where they land, but sometimes they get lucky, roll into the water, and are swept out to sea on an ocean current. The beginning of a long journey, looking for a new island to call home.
Follow those coconuts!
Is that Dave out there?
Not only does the coconut float, kids, don't try this at home. It has a thick, fibrous husk and a hard, hairy shell. The shape and structure protects the developing embryo from the salty seawater.
It takes a long time for a coconut to germinate and sprout, which is good because a coconut can survive more than 100 days at sea. By then, a favorable current can carry it 3,000 miles. That's the distance from California to New York. Washed up on a distant shore, the coconut sprouts and takes root. And in 6 to 10 years, a mature coconut palm begins the cycle all over again.
And so our intrepid voyagers find their new homes on some uncharted desert isle.
Hey, Dave.
Hey, SuChin.
Time to say goodbye. What are you doing out here?
I'm following these coconuts.
I'm not even gonna ask.
Oh, no, this is serious research.
Dave, let's just say goodbye.
Goodbye, folks.
We'll see you next time on Newton's Apple.
Newton's Apple is made possible by a grant from 3M and its employees. Creative people who put science to work for you. 3M. Innovation. For information about tapes, transcripts, and other science resources for home and school, please call us toll-free at 1-800-588-NEWTON.
SuChin, Pak, and I are here in Tahiti Tahiti!
It's very difficult to match perfect pearls into strands.
Oh, no, SuChin, this is serious research. Do you want to say goodbye?
He's a shark.
Okay.
Hey! We'll see you next time on Newton's Apple.
This is PBS.